How do Canadians and Americans feel about the Canadian election? Well, it's true. Mark Carney has been elected Prime Minister of Canada. For a lot of Canadians, we weren't able to call him the Prime Minister yet because he wasn't duly elected. He was instilled by the previous government to become the leader of the party and then the country. But he has been elected now Prime Minister of Canada. And, one of the things that Mark Carney turned around and, made a big part of his campaign was the fact that he was going to stand up to U.S. President Donald Trump. So there became a huge divide over the last few months between Canada and the United States. And it should never have happened. And so now, one of the things that just happened was the fact that President Trump had reached out to Prime Minister Carney and said, hey, you know what? Maybe we should get together and have a conversation. Now, I'd love to be the fly on the wall during that conversation because, quite frankly, what are they going to say? I mean, it's funny during media. You keep hearing things, President Trump keeps offering to make Canada the 51st state. And of course, Prime Minister Carney, he's now sitting there saying, that's never going to happen. And, elbows up. Okay, we're way past that at this point. Now we have to start our negotiations as, cooperating countries. So what's going to happen? Now, it's funny because, one of the things that I have never seen is actually a picture with Mark Carney and Donald Trump together. Maybe there's some sitting there in the internet, but we had to do the split picture to show the two of them because they've never really gotten face to face because Mark Carney's never been a politician, never run a country, and never done anything. And of course, we know who Donald Trump is. So when we take a look at the big picture, how is this going to go? I kind of started, playing in my head, what's the conversation going to be? And, Mark Carney, meeting President Trump and saying, hi, President Trump, it's a pleasure to meet you. And, you think about, President Trump saying, well, Governor Carney, it's, a pleasure to meet you. Are you going to thank me for handing you the Canadian election? I mean, we know that one of the main reasons why Mark Carney got elected was because of the threat of the tariffs from President Donald Trump. So, how is this little conversation going to go? Like I said, I'd love to be the fly on the wall. And I'm sure that whoever reports it, we're going to get two different reports. And the one with Carney, I'm sure, is not going to be 100% the truth because we already know how he reports back after having a conversation with Donald Trump. He didn't even bring up the fact that Donald Trump did mention the 51st state during his last conversation prior to the election. And again, what's going to truly happen? So at this time, this juncture, as I think both Canadians and Americans, we need to get on the same path. Let's stop this, beating each other up. And as Canadians, we're stuck with our situation. May not be the full 4 years. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with the government. And right now, Canada is going to face, some unity crisis. We can take a look at Quebec. We can take a look at Alberta. We can take a look at Saskatchewan. Where is Canada going to end up? But right now, I think that Mark Carney should prioritize 100% proper negotiations, proper conversations with President Trump. Because at this stage, this is what he claimed to be the greatest threat ever known in our lives to Canada. I'd never agreed with that rhetoric, but it is a threat only because you've made it a threat. So what do you do with a threat, Prime Minister Carney? You should turn around and instead of threatening it back, you should diffuse it. If you want to learn anything about negotiation, you don't piss off what you deem to be the enemy, and nor do I believe that the U.S. is the enemy of Canada. You've made that your narrative. That's how you won. Well, Mr. Carney, it's time for you to prove yourself as being the new Prime Minister of Canada. You know what, President Trump, I think you're going to have a field day with this guy. I think it's going to be pretty easy for you to manipulate him. I just don't know where this is going to go. But as a Canadian, you know what? I will be keeping my eye on this, because as Canadians and my fellow Americans, we got to make sure that, the parents come to play, not the kids. And, us sending Carney in, I feel like that's what's happening. But when we take a look at what's actually happening in Canada, you know what? We've got a lot of repairs to do. I hope that, Mr. Carney, or Prime Minister Carney, actually takes the time to worry about Canadians. Forget about your agenda for a little while. You know what? Forget about going green. Worry about Canadians, the hardworking, tax-paying Canadians, by the way, that turn around and actually voted you in. Maybe it's time, Mr. Carney, that you put somebody else's agenda ahead of yours. One of the things I'd love you to do, give me some of your comments. What do you think that conversation is going to look like between President Trump and Prime Minister Carney? As I always wrap it up every single time, hey, let's keep an eye on everybody. You know what? Watch out for your family, your children, your friends, your neighbors, the next generation. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Todd C. Slater.